When you think about Silicon Valley, its unique work environment immediately comes to mind. All companies have their own culture, and it is the very thing that not only helps to identify the company but also can make or break it. In this book, venture capitalist Ben Horowitz takes you through history to highlight some fantastic leaders and cultural influences that produced unbelievable outcomes. From there, he dissects and discusses how those same techniques can help you build the ideal culture for your own company. Despite the detailed historical outlines and examples of applications, don't be fooled into thinking that reading this book will make your culture-shaping job easy. Horowitz makes it clear exactly how influential culture is to a company and that you cannot afford to just copy and paste from somewhere else. Without a comprehensive grasp of what you want, what you do, and who you are, your company culture will not serve its purpose. There are many types of communication within a company. Unfortunately, the larger your company is, the harder it is for you to communicate anything. Thus, you need a strong culture to help smooth things along and speed up processes. Your company's culture determines how the company makes decisions even when you're not there. With a strong company culture, you can be sure that things are probably going the way you want them to. The culture that you're in can also serve to change the kind of person you are. If you lack an intentional and well-designed company culture, it doesn't mean that your company just doesn't have one. Instead, it means that the culture you have is accidental, and this can wreak havoc. That said, it doesn't do well just to copy their rules wholesale. They can be counterproductive because you may not understand the underlying purposes and principles. Suppose you've managed to shape the right culture for your company, congratulations. But don't relax just yet. In business, everything is continuously moving as everyone fights to get the next great product out on the market. As technologies advance and the bar gets set ever higher, so does your culture. Your company will need to adapt to the current conditions of the business world, and the best way to do that is through your company culture. Terms will be different from when you first start, when you have a stable foothold, and when you're at the top of the market. And your company culture should reflect that. Sometimes, these conditions are what dictates the culture you require. Setting aside your company culture is sometimes needed. This is especially true if your culture starts getting into the way of getting things done or causes more problems than it fixes. When this happens, it's a sure sign that it's time for your culture to undergo some changes. With all the work you're putting into designing your company's culture, it's only natural that you want to see it bear fruit. It will undoubtedly do so, but there are a few notions that you must first get out of your head. Primarily, it's the idea that your culture is perfect. Your company culture won't be perfect. Even with the best kind of culture, not everyone will comply with it. It's just the way things work. For one thing, people are diverse, and each comes already programmed with their own cultural points of departure. Regardless of what you do, there will be those who cannot fit into the mold that you want. Sometimes, this is good. It's a sign that there's diversity at play and keeps your company flexible enough to adapt to any abrupt changes. Beware, though, noncompliance can be a terrible sign of things gone wrong with the culture that you've tried to program. If something happens that's wildly out of your desired behavior, but that you often see somewhere down the line, your programming has become buggy. The first step to designing your company's culture starts with you. What do you want your company to be like, and what do you want it to become? At the same time, you need to balance that with what your company needs and how you intend to get it there. The strategies used to grow your company and make it succeed play a considerable part in your culture. Your culture must fit the needs of the market and the company. If it doesn't, you're going to have a great culture for a company that doesn't even exist. One way to think about the culture to have is by considering what kind of employees you need and want. Keeping in mind the culture you want to create helps to hire the key people that you need. Another critical component of cultural design has to do with you. Getting a culture to stick is hard. It only gets harder if the virtues it upholds are ones you can't even get behind yourself. Thus, you should always extract the parts of yourself that you want to see in your company. Your first day at work can be stressful and intimidating. It's when your eyes and ears are most open and receptive to all the stimuli presented to you. This first day is when you learn the most long-lasting lessons about your new workplace. It's just like Shaka Singh on his first day in prison. As the CEO of a company, your job isn't to make sure that the culture lessons new employees learn sticks, it's that they learn the right culture. This is the time when you highlight what kind of behaviors get rewarded, what the gold standard is and what is expected, and how your employees get there. If your employee orientation isn't up to standard, then your employees won't be either. It is especially important when getting your core group together, those people who will lead your other employees in turn, that you hire the people who share your work culture values. These people will be helping you to set and maintain the company culture, which is why they should already be good examples. Culture can be an abstract concept. While it's mostly a set of actions that you do, how you translate what you want to what is accomplished is by setting rules that are so shocking that there is no alternative but for them to stick forever in the minds of all your employees. This kind of rule is often controversial or extreme. In Tao St. Louverture's army, this rule was that married officers weren't allowed to take concubines. The coach of the New York Giants, however, opted instead to have meetings start 5 minutes early. These rules make no sense and beg the question of why. This is precisely what makes the rule so effective. When the reasoning is explained, it is something that everyone will remember. Every time the answer is repeated, it solidifies and builds your culture for you. That said, you must first make sure that your rule has the right answer before you demand everyone to do something seemingly ridiculous. As much as your company's culture requires you to be at its heart, it cannot survive if you're the only person it is modeled after. There are times when you need to change to survive. Now is the time where diversity and outside leadership can come in and save the day. One way to get the kind of culture that you need but don't necessarily have is to get someone who already embodies that culture. These people will bring not only their technical expertise but also a different kind of personality and drive that will supercharge your current culture and change it into something that works better for your current situation. However, when thinking about diversity, it is critical to focus less on gender and color than on what advantages they bring. What about their backgrounds and experiences makes them uniquely suitable for the job? It might be their underlying perseverance or carefulness that is what's needed, and hiring based on color or gender criteria may blind you to that. We all want to believe that we are good people, but how many of us can honestly say that we are when put to the test? When faced with the choice between financial well-being or the vague concept of being a good person, it can be challenging for anyone to choose ethics and integrity, especially when the threat of being fired looms. That said, it is dangerous for a company to overlook ethical breaches in favor of profits. To prevent this, you must be explicit in your demands for integrity. Having detailed and strict rules in place regarding your company's moral standards will help to ensure that your staff will act as scrupulously as possible. It helps to be as specific and transparent as possible when communicating this. Like the Japanese with their code of Bushido, you should make it clear that in every scenario, integrity and ethics comes first. If someone goes against that, consequences will follow, as they would have in Louverture's army. This book makes clear the difference between values and virtues. Values are what you believe in, while virtues are what you actively pursue. Thus, virtues are actions, which makes them the very heart of the culture that you're trying to implement. Still, virtues can sound vague and be hard to grasp conceptually. After all, what do phrases such as customer-obsessed and ideas over hierarchy means when it comes down to it? What is it that's being done? This is why designing a culture is so difficult. Virtues must have meanings behind them. In this way, your virtues will serve their purpose to the company and your business strategy. Define your virtues clearly and in detail, preferably with memorable stories behind them. The prevailing culture of casual dress in Silicon Valley promoted meritocracy over hierarchy, for example. Be aware that not all virtues will work or be helpful, even if it's something that you want to see reflected in your company. Your needs may change as your company grows or as the market evolves, but always be ready to alter your virtues as necessary. The quickest way to undermine all your effort with regard to your company's culture is by going against it yourself. This may not be intentional, as business conditions may force you between a rock and a hard place. When that time comes, you'll face the unenviable decision of following your culture or your company's survival. That said, you should always be aware of this circumstance occurring and be ready to face it. Don't let yourself react on impulse and irreparably break your culture accidentally. You act as the highest role model of your company's culture. Therefore, every action that you do, every choice that you make should reflect your cultural virtues. It's best to start with yourself when you design your culture in the first place. If your virtues include honesty, always be transparent and never lie to anyone, be they your board, executives, staff, or customers. Once someone catches you out on something counterculture, expect that aspect to be fed to the flames almost instantly. According to Ben Horowitz, every culture needs trust, the capability to accept bad news, and loyalty. You need your people to put their faith in you and each other so that your company can deliver on all its promises. You need to be ready to handle all the problems that crop up. Even if a solution isn't readily available, getting to know and accept bad news will get you on the road to solving those problems. Last is loyalty. Even if the company is sold and you've moved on to other projects, you want to make sure that your company is well remembered by all its employees. What will remain is what it felt like to work there. If you have good relationships with your staff, they will do their best in the time they spend working for you. The best thing you can do for your company culture is to make it so that everyone who works there cares about the work. In turn, their care will turn into success for your company.